11 o'clock by my phone. This is CornCon. Our talk is on digital forensics called These Artifacts Aren't Fiction. My name is Matt Scheuer. I will introduce my colleague here, Mr. Tuan Phan, here momentarily and let him take it away. And we're going to trade off here as we co-present this talk. To save your cell phone batteries, you can get a PDF of this file at slides.dfirmat.com. We'll redirect you to my GitHub repo where you can download a PDF copy of today's slide deck. And with that, take a picture here if he wants. All right, let's go. So, for those who don't know me, I work for a big, well-known place. We could walk a few blocks from here. I could point at a big building and say, yeah, that one. And you would be like, yep, I know, I've heard of that. So I'm Vice President of Computer Security and Incident Response there. I've got a lot of hands-on digital forensics and incident response experience. I've got a podcast that's been in the dustbin for a million years. Don't try to check it out because there's nothing out there, but one of these days we'll get back to it. If you're not connected with me on social media already, you can see my LinkedIn and my social media accounts up here at C3RKAH. Please do connect with me. Give me a follow. I will try to give you a follow back. And some quick things about me. I'm an official hacking is not a crime advocate. That's not to say cybercrime isn't crime, because it is, but hacking is not a crime. I'm on the advisory board, actually with Tuan, for the Warren County Career Center, their IT and cybersecurity program. That's something we do locally to help change how we're educating people on cybersecurity topics, because frankly we see issues with how it's been done. We want to make it better. And I'm also a WAMSA volunteer, which is the Women's Security Alliance. If you're not familiar with them, check them out at wamsa.org. They're always looking for mentors and mentees. So if that speaks to you, check out the website and please engage and get involved. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Tuan, and he's going to take it away for a little bit. I will be back momentarily.
All right, thank you, man. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. This is my first time actually at the Quad, Cities Con here. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward for more. My name is Tuan Phan. I'm the independent info security researcher. I also work at a place where I can't tell you where I work, at a great financial institute here, but I can walk you to there and show you the sign as well, but I can't tell you exactly where. I'm the assistant vice president to the vice president over there. I serve there as the e-discovery, digital forensics investigations / incident response and insider threat strategy. Yes, we do have our day jobs. So anything that we talk today in terms of our opinion is expressed are basically solely on our own info security research. It does not express or reflect any of the view of our employers. We're both not lawyers, so this presentation both of us put in together as a educational purposes only. So please consult with your qualified legals or outside legal counsel before using our techniques here and apply to your actual investigation. We flatter if you do, just let us know how it works out. Due to the presentation's time constraint, both Matt and I do have a lot of things to cover. This stuff, the topics up here basically will be out of scope. Third-party forensically sound tools such as the memory capture, memory dumps, we're not going to touch base on those. We will not touch base on the disk imaging tool as well in terms of how you get the evidence in and how you preserve the evidence. We will not touch base on how to do the change of custody in terms of evidence when you intake them. We will not talk about the court cases and trials either. With that, we will not touch base on the data handling, any acceptable practice to the forensics methodologies and stuff like that. That include the isolations, remote access, and when you should be able to disconnect and shut down your endpoint or for your evidence-wise. With that, there are also data storage, data archival, and anything that is in terms of data write blocker, we will not touch base. We'd be happy to touch base with you afterward and talk about it, or if you feel like if we need to talk about it in a certain slide, we'd be happy to put in the slide for the next talk. With that, I'll turn back to the awesome VP here so he can start out with his talk.
Tuan. All right, so data preservation methodology. This is very important when you do forensics. So we want to collect a forensic image first and foremost. That's the first thing we want to do. Also want to highlight, you should work from a forensic clone. That is a copy of your forensic image that should be verified rather than the original image, because now you're modifying evidence and courts don't like that. So after you complete and hash the forensic image out, while you're creating that forensic clone, and you have the forensic image, copying, making duplicates of that. It really is a great opportunity to then start doing live acquisition off the host. And we want to minimize any activities that could modify system data and access times as much as possible. That is supremely important because this is forensics. These are things that could potentially end up with you having to testify in front of a judge and potentially a jury. So I'm going to start off talking about the Windows SRUM database. This is something that's been built into Windows, I think since Windows 8 and above, and so there's a lot of stuff in the Windows SRUM database. It will give you a lot of similar information to an EDR or a SIM. I'm not saying don't use your EDR and your SIM. If you have them in the environment, by all means, use those things. However, you can use this to basically compare what is in the SRUM database to your SIM and your EDR platforms. And also, you may be in a situation where SIM's not ingesting something correctly. The data is simply not there. There is no EDR. Something happened, because we live in an imperfect world, and I've seen all these kinds of problems. The SRUM database is the srudb.dat. It's an extensible storage engine database, and we're going to talk about that. That is located on a Windows endpoint typically under C Windows System 32 srudb.dat. Think of the SRUM database as having a lot of the kinds of information that we talked about. We're going to focus specifically on the application and the network data within that. And again, it's not really intended to be used for forensic purposes, but we can use it for that nonetheless. And it's pretty powerful because you typically have maybe 30 days or more of data within there. Some useful SRUM data, again, we're going to focus on application resource usage and network usage, as I talked about momentarily. srudb.dat tools. There's a number of awesome tools that will help you analyze this file. SRUM dump 2, if you can satisfy the Python requirements and get that working, is pretty cool. It'll dump out everything into nice files that you can then look at, and gets a lot of great information out of there. Velociraptor is an open source tool that's sort of backed by Rapid7, and you can use that tool as well. We like these Nearsoft tools. They're technically not open source, but they are freely available to download and use. And so Nearsoft.net has a couple tools, and Tuan will even talk a little bit more about some of those. But these are specific to analyzing the SRUM database, and again, there's links there. And for anybody that missed it, slides.dfirmat.com, you can get the PDF of this, and I've got that at the back of the deck as well. So here's a quick screenshot. I know it's a bit of an eye chart, but what we're looking at here is an example of the output. And so what it'll give us, timestamps, which is very important when you're trying to understand what happened when. You need to know, you need to be able to prove what happened when on an endpoint. And this is giving us the application that happened to be executing when. Now, you just see the user SID here. If you're doing this on a live endpoint, you will actually see the username listed. If you can export the right keys out of the Windows registry, you can map that out as well very easily. Otherwise, there's other methods for mapping those out. This is a worst case scenario, which is great because there is really good detail in here. And when you drill into specific items, I've got a screenshot here. So again, we've got our timestamp, we've got our application name, and it's got the full path to it. Again, the user SID that it executed under. FaceTime is gives you an idea how long the thing may have been running. And there's some other information we don't care a ton about, but yeah, these are the big things, the cycle times and number of bytes read, written, also kind of important when you're trying to understand or explain what happened data-wise. You can match these things up with the network resource usage. And so these, again, will tell you which application. It tells you how many bytes sent, how many bytes received, and it also tells you the user context in which that happened under. So if you're trying to understand a data exfiltration or a compromise or a breach, and you have an application and you want to understand and answer those questions, well, what may have, it won't tell you exactly what may have been sent, but it'll give you a ballpark idea based on the transfer bytes sent and received. So this is extremely powerful information to have, and again, you can use this for your investigation. You can use it to supplement what you have today in your investigations as well. So, some quick Strum database conclusions. The Windows Strum database helps us with identifying file execution, user attribution, verifying activity, particularly on the endpoint you're looking at, right? Correlation and timelining of system events, which is incredibly important, particularly when you're comparing application to network utilization. And now that we have tamed this through, I'm going to hand it back over to Tuan.
The Assistant Vice President. Yep. So I just want to touch base with Matt again with the Strum data. A lot of these logs are not really forensics intended. It's for incident response, it's for backup, it's for understanding what's going on with the system. But in a digital forensic world, we use that, we leverage that for our own to get the cookies crumbs and stuff like that. The Strum database is actually very important to digital world in forensics. You can get a lot of not FaceTime, but screen time, stuff like that. So if you do a lot of investigations on user, when they want to know how much they're actually working, you can get a pull report in terms of, hey, when did the system working, what time did it boot up, how long was durations of the system upline, what was the screen time and stuff like that. You can actually get all those information to provide to your investigation lead. If HR asking, I want to know if Matt does the work or not, or did he just turn on the computer and went guffing. So another great web artifact is the web browser artifacts, which is, I think, is one of the best to me. We're going to touch base on what they are, where they are, how they important to us, and how we're going to parse the data for any type of the investigation need. So first, we're going to touch base on what and where. Is these are the artifacts that the data left behind by your favorite web browsers, such as Safari, Chrome, Edge, all of those. Every time you visit a website, it captures all that. Your computer or your mobile devices will store these varieties of details, information where you visit, in terms of what you shopping at, or things like, hey, where's your address, or your emails and stuff like that. So a different browser will store their artifacts in a different location, of course, but majority in the same location, just different naming format. So why are they important to us, right? So just like Strum data, this is the browser history. It's very essential to the digital forensic world and also the incident response team too as well. These artifacts actually identify and help the incident response team to pin down the source of malicious traffic. So who did what, where, and how, or how did it get into the system like that. So it's a great tool, it's great logs that you can use to leverage for your investigation. It's also great for proxy policy violations. So let's say if your manager said, hey, I don't know if Matt here worked or not. Does he spend too much time on the GMB bets, or football is now on. So those are the things that we want to make sure we get the proxy logs so that we can provide to the investigation. So now that we have, we know what it is and we know how important it is. So what tool do we use to extract the data so that we can parse it? There's a lot of tools you can use for data extractions and do the analysis on. Good there. Browser history view from Neurosoft. Another one is the browser download view. You can also do the DB browser for SQLite, which is a lot of browser now is going toward the database type. So it's great if you know a lot of DB browser SQLite. It's great for you to parse out the data. Hindsight is phasing away, but I still use it for Chrome. I still use it for Firefox and stuff like that. Of course, there's also various third-party commercial tools as well. If you are in the enterprise environment, you have to have a checkbox for your compliance. So there are something out there for you to leverage. Most of this tool you can download and try it out on your own risk. It's a great tool. So now that you have all that, the question is, how do I get the artifact source? Where does it come from? It comes from the suspect hard drive. Things, inside a threat would send it to you, or the incident response team will say, hey, I have a suspected hard drive. Can you take an image of it, and can you provide me the artifacts of it? Or the forensic clones, when you do the live triage, you do the hard drive image, you do the memory dumps at that time too as well. All those files can be, point to the tool and to parse it out for you. So like database and other files, such as the user profile, you can just extract it out from the windows and then point the tools to it, and it parses out the data for you. So easy peasy. So now that we know what it is, let's dive into the high-value artifacts, most notably. Now, the naming of it will tell you what it does, right? The history / URL, the type that URL searches, those will be captured in those artifacts. The cache, the login, the cookies, of course, where you've been and what you do. My favorite is the form values autofill. So let's say you go Amazon and you click on, you buy something, it knows what address it's going to be populated. It knows exactly your emails. It knows that you logged in. So those are great to prove your investigation that, yeah, Matt here went to Amazon, bought a whole bunch of shoes, right? Download too as well. So download is great for incident response. They want to know, did Matt download anything from anywhere, and did he open it, did he execute it and stuff like that? So those are the great, to me, most notable artifacts to me. We also do favorite too as well, aka bookmarks. But nowadays, not too many people actually, do any shortcut of those anymore. When you type in Facebook, like FA, it automatically knows that you're going to go Facebook. So you can use the type the URL, and then you can define that, yeah, he's going to Facebook rather than the favorites. Because nowadays, I don't think you use bookmark anymore, right? So I also want to touch base on the private browsing too as well, which is aka incognito. Now, a lot of people in here, we use this browsing mode so that we allow user to surf the web without retaining any of this evidence, any cookie crumbs. Well, that doesn't mean that we can't get it. We can with the memory dumps, right? So when you do the snapshot of the memory to do your memory analysis, your memory dump not only capture the running processing, it also contains the web browser artifacts at that time of the memory capture. So one thing that is very important to this one, you gotta know what time that the memory dump was captured, so that you can correlate with your investigations. Otherwise, you can be looking at the memory dump file and you'll be out of scope because of the time frame is not right. So make sure your time frame match with your memory dump, match with your investigation. When was the user actually browsed the web? It saves you a lot of time and headaches. We're going to dive into one of the examples here, the most notable, the history, the URL. So as you can see here, this artifacts reveal a lot of things, right? The navigation history of the user. You identify where the user, what time they visit, the date and time, with the timestamp too as well, and the time zone. You get the title of the URL, and you get the URL path itself. How did he visit it? Visit by link? Was it by, verse by typing it in, or was it a redirect? And often, how often did he use? We don't really use the visit count because a lot of pages now are very dynamic, so it's a lot of false positive. So we will dive in more, but the tool like this, like Foxtron will give you, is the Browser History Examiner. You type it in and you print it to the source, it will pull all the information for you, and you can just parse it out into an Excel format. Here's an example of the history artifacts path where's the cookie crumbs from. So you see here Microsoft Edge and the Google Chrome, they're very similar because they're built on the same engine there, right? So you see it's under user, username, app data, local, Google, of course, because it's Google. If it's Edge, it will say Edge. But then you see it's under default cache. The Firefox Mozilla is a little bit different, but they're still both in the same location, so it's not anything different. So that's the path for you. Here's another history parse out, for example, for you. This is one of the Neurosoft software that I mentioned earlier. You can download this, launch it, put in the time frame that you want. If you don't know the time frame, I usually pull as much as I can, because you never know. HR will come back and say, hey, well, what if, did he does anything prior to that? So we want to pull everything in the kitchen sink. So web browser, he may use not just Chrome. He may use Opera. I don't know anybody use any those anymore, but who knows, right? But I will click all if you don't know. And more information is better than no information, or least information. Once you have that, you click it, it goes to the endpoint, assuming that you don't have, antivirus or anything that alerts. Again, these tools, it will flag as, hacking tools, so be aware of. So once it's working right, you get the admins right, it will pull back and give you all these details in terms of the URL where you visit, the title of the URL. It will tell you what time he sent, he went there, visit count, of course, again. What type of browser did he use? Did he use Safari or did he use Chrome? It defined that, so that all this information is great to give it to the HR investigations. And it's also, he can't lie. If he is the administrator to that workstation, then he is that person. Even if you own a domain, it will list out your domain IDs too as well. So you cannot lie. Data don't lie, baby. So once you get the data there, like I said before, you can parse it out into Excel, slice and dice to CSV file, make it nice, readable, interpretable for the HR, so that it's easy for them, so that, hey, this is what Matt did. Boom, you got your reports already, so no need to do anything extra. Here's another history parse out example using the SQLite database. Honestly, I don't like using SQLite database, but I have to now, because most of the browser now go into the database. But a lot of incident response teams, they like to use it because they know how to use the SQLites and stuff. You can pull out the row, the columns, and what you're looking for over there. The only thing I hate about another thing is with the SQLites is it using that epoch time. So you have to convert it. And then in order for you to export this out, you have to run the query, and then it X out in an Excel file. It's just too much work for me. I just like the simple, quick and efficient. Here's another thing, the notable artifacts is the typed address URL. A lot of HR always want to ask us, like, did he really type in Facebook? Yeah, he typed in FAC, and it give him Facebook, and he click on it, and then it goes there. So this artifact contained that type that he typed it in to the address bar and went there. You can also find this too as well in the window registry. So when you do forensics, normally I capture the registry too as well as part of my checklist. But it's also in there. Not much of information, but if you use one of this tool, it gives you more. As you can see here as an example, right? So if he using the Chrome here, right, then he go to the title of the URL, when he visit, and it tells you the visit type, which is the URL that he typed it in. It tells you the duration of the time that he spent on that page as well. To me, duration, it's more like a tab. He can just go YouTube, listen to music, and then turn on the other tab. So it doesn't really affect on the investigations. You can see here the example of the artifacts from the registry. It's a little bit cut out, it's very dry. It doesn't have much information. So use the tool, it's much easier for you, save your life, save your time. The next thing I like about it is the browser cache. This is one of the other notable high value for incident response team. They contain a cache, not just image, but JavaScript file and what script was run. So this great for incident response when they're looking for who did what, where, and when. Did the script run? What script was it run? And it's very great for that type of investigation. And it's also good if you do like image investigations. We want to know if Matt liked cars, did Matt like puppies or cats. It's easy. I just go in, look at the thumbnail, and I can determine right away, rather than spending too much time. Because in the investigation world, we have a lot of cases to work on. We don't have to sit there and looking all the time. So the example artifacts path, as you can see, Chrome and Edge again, they're the same. It's stored in the cache, and using the tool, you can just take out that cache, it drop out all the images for you. And like I said, I will give you an example, which is next here. You see here. So we see here if Matt liked Formula One, all I need to do is like, yep, there's a Formula One, there's another one, and I don't need to do anything else. I can just extract this out, give it to the investigator, and just tell them, hey, Matt here looked for cars, and this is all his URL, and this is all his artifacts. He cannot lie. Just give him that, and there's nothing else to say. Another one, the notable high value is the download I mentioned before, which is who did where, what, where, and when, and how. So let's say it provides the locations. Now, default, your window will put in the download folders. Now, Matt here is smarter than that. He's going to put it into his thumb drive. This artifact will tell you exactly what that location is, and did he download it or not, and where did he download it from. So this artifacts path is, like I said, it's stored under the Chrome Edge download folder. The history, you can see it up there in the path, right? Firefox, again, is a little bit different, but you can do it in the query it out from place to SQLite database, and it pull everything for you. I will give you an example next here. As you can see, using the SQLite database browser GUI with the table, I click on download. It will give me the IDs of, that type of record, the current path, the start time, the receive, the total bytes of the file, the malicious file. So that way he put that in the report too as well for his incident response. So in the download state, there's another column there. It will tell you to see if the download state was it corrupted, was it successful, or was it, partially. Now, once you download it, there's another row. I didn't have it on here, but it will tell you if he clicked it and opened it. So Matt here said, I downloaded it, but I didn't open. Yeah, you did. You clicked on it, all right? So everything here, like I said, is provided. It's scary. Sometimes I don't even browse the web anymore. So here's another example of the browser download view from the Neurosoft. Much easier to read, as you can see, with the SQLite. It's a little bit hard. Right? File name, what file was it? Boom. Where did it download from? Web page that you went to, right? Start time, the end time. And the download side, all those is important for his investigation in the incident response team. They want to know exactly the size, and if you can take that file names out, hash it, and then hunt for it. So that's also great. So what am I looking here for future trends for all this web browser artifacts? I anticipate, the growing needs performing forensic analysis within the web browser, especially going to be a lot on mobile devices going forward, and in the cloud environment. And scary as it seems, we're starting to get into the AI forensics too as well, in terms of how do we define what's real and what's not. It's getting harder and harder. As we look toward to the future, I see two things that are going to be emerge, right? The e-technologies, the e-business. While we continue to evolve, there's going to be a lot of data privacies and stuff. So a lot of browser will mask all this. So you're going to have to do a lot of memory dump. You're going to have to do a lot of data carving. So with that, there's going to be a lot of demand on the forensic itself. So with the increasing of the cybercrime demanding more talent in this field. So it's great that you have this type of skill to do your work and have your work in terms of security, job security. So in conclusion, right, while web browser play a very pivotal role to the internet, now everybody is on a mobile phone. Everything is on the web. And a lot of things would be targeted by the threat actors up there. So analyzing the web browser itself, it helps us understand better the objective, the method of how the threat actor goes, what their motive are, where did they do it, how did they do it, and when did they do it, and stuff like that. It's great for insider threat too as well. So examining the suspect system, to me, the web browser logs, details, or shrunk data is great. It's a key factor for most of the investigations. So that's my conclusion. So I'm turning it back here to the VP here.
All right, thank you, Tuan. And for the record, when I'm not buying those light-up shoes The only thing my browser history shows is I'm a very hardworking practitioner. Alright, so PowerShell artifact collection. Using commands and commandlets for this, and the idea is we're going to grab some artifacts off the system for e-discovery purposes. This is something I kind of did some research on. It was really inspired by living off the line, or land binaries and scripts, or LOLBAS, because offensive security folks love doing that. If it's on the system, they can leverage it. It's not something they have to figure out how to plant on the system and then execute. So, hey, if offensive security folks can do this stuff, well, we can too, or is it two? I don't know. But either way, we're going to do this. All right, so objectives. We're going to leverage PowerShell scripts, grab these artifacts from the endpoint being investigated. This is really inspired by RFC 3227, specifically section 2.1, which is the order of volatility. And that's really the guidelines for evidence collecting and archiving. Hit me up after this or in the after party. I've got a funny story perspective on the authors of this old RFC. And some people might be like, hey, you know, it really says you shouldn't use built-in tools. Understand technology and those kind of conditions change, but methodologies are often hold true for much longer period of time. So I feel pretty safe in leveraging PowerShell for these purposes. So avoid commands that will alter the system. We're mostly going to stick with the get, dash, etc. commands and commandlets. We're going to, again, back to data preservation, avoid doing things that are going to mess with the data on the system. And so we also don't want to import third-party modules or installing external things because, again, that modifies the system. That calls your investigation into a question. And in a court of law, that's a very bad thing. So, with that, there are a couple things that you actually have to run PowerShell as administrator, which is an elevated privilege. And if you decide to do that, you may have to justify that in front of a court why you did that. There are a couple potential use cases that you could use to justify that. It's going to be up to you to decide whether or not you're going to do that, but at least these are things you might be able to use to help explain that activity. So PowerShell logging, all right, CornCon attendees, by show of hands in the room, how many of you like doing, creating, writing, authoring documentation? There's usually one or two in every crowd, not one hand went up. So I have great news for all of you. If you don't like doing documentation, if you're not familiar with start-transcript, oh, this is cool. You can do a -path option to save it somewhere on your drive or endpoint. The -no clobber tack at the end is so it appends to a file rather than write it out. But what that does is it timestamps when you started doing this. It also records everything you typed into PowerShell. It types or records everything, logs everything that you get back from the output. In other words, it self-documents everything you do, and this is awesome beyond just using PowerShell for e-discovery. Now, when you're done, stop-transcript will record the time out. That, this is the time that the transcript stops. So this is how we can timestamp what the activity that we've done. Grabbing the version might be helpful, particularly when you're explaining how you collected the evidence of what you used. So the $PS version table really tells you what version of PowerShell was on the endpoint. And if you're using PowerShell 5.1 or higher on the local endpoint, and again, I don't recommend just upgrading PowerShell on the endpoint that you're investigating because, again, you're modifying the system. So that's kind of just cool to get that if you have it. Natively on the box. I'm kind of a Linux guy. You can probably tell if you saw my screen before I started popping up the screenshot. So what's kind of cool in Linux, right, is we have -v for verbose. We have -vv for very verbose. And then you have -vvv for very, very verbose. PowerShell has something similar. And one of the problems with PowerShell is it truncates everything. Everything's shrunk down, and most of the time that's cool if you're just using a system. It's not cool if you're trying to collect e-discovery evidence and you're like, what was the path? I don't know, it cut it off. So If you pipe everything out to format-list, that gives you more output. It's similar to verbose. If you do pipe format-list asterisk, that gives you more output. And then format-list property asterisk gives you max output unredacted. If you're doing an investigation, that's probably what you're going to want to use. All right, system time. Again, you might want to do these several times while you're collecting these artifacts, because you're trying to timeline your investigation so you can explain what you did when. And if you were smart and you did your start transcript, it's recording when you started, but you can also record the times you did things along the way. So get dash time, get dash time zone, those should be pretty self-explanatory. Get dash uptime tells you how long obviously the system's been running, right? Oops. Get dash computer info gives you a lot of really cool properties. You can specify dash property OS last boot up time to get just that piece of it. But we'll talk later. Again, the idea here is we want to get the things that are volatile first, the most volatile, and work our way back. And what I mean by that is the data that's on your in memory is going to disappear very quickly compared to, say, your hard drive, which is going to be typically very differently than that USB stick that's plugged into the system. So you want to get the things that are going to disappear fastest first, and then work your way down to the things that are going to change or alter the slowest. And so this is really helpful, which we'll touch on later on. But yeah, and so you can also get the OS uptime to not just tell you, hey, here's when it booted up, but like literally in minutes and seconds how long it's been running. What I recommend is, I'm a big proponent, particularly if you have an environment that covers more than one time zone, using UTC or GMT time so that you can synchronize your logs and your investigation and correlate across multiple sources. Makes it really helpful. And so we can use the $time equals get dash date to get our time, but then we can also convert that using $time dot to universal time and open close parentheses to get that UTC or GMT time. So that really helps us out, particularly when you've got a big environment that might have data here, there, and everywhere. All right, hashing files. This is a lot easier, or a lot cleaner, if you will, on Linux, because you can use like a MD5 sum in a file, or get dash SHA-256 in your file path. It's a little harder in Windows, but at least it's there with PowerShell. It's not there in the native command prompt, but get dash file hash, and you specify the file or the path to the file, and then you dash algorithm, and you've got a number of variety of algorithms from MD5 to SHA-512. So if you need to hash files so you can search for them against VirusTotal, for example, or any other security tool, this will get you the hash values. You don't have to install a third-party tool. It's built right into PowerShell. Use it. Volatile network artifacts, again, these things will disappear quick. And if you go back to that RFC 3227 that says get ARP first, network traffic details, and DNS cache, that's sort of what these commands do, from get-net route, get-net neighbor, get-net TCP connection. Now it gets a little weird because you might think, well, why isn't UDP get-net UDP connection? Because UDP is a connectionless protocol, right? So just know that it's not exactly the same commandlet if you're trying to capture that UDP traffic. So get-net UDP endpoint will get you your UDP traffic. And then finally, this is super helpful. Get-DNS cache, or client cache, will tell you, hey, here's what this system has talked to hostname wise. How many people need to investigate a C2 in incident response and digital forensics, and who went where and what was cached in the system? That's a really important artifact to grab off the endpoint. So process and services, what's running on the box is kind of important to know. Like, well, what was running at the time when this thing happened? What's running on the box right now? Get-process will give you processes, services that are running on the endpoint. and get-service, again, will get you the services from the services.msc that show you what's running on the endpoint, and those are things you want to capture, because when you're investigating, like what was happening on the box. And yes, sure, you will get this stuff in a memory dump. I'm not saying you won't, because you absolutely will, but again, you can use this to correlate things, and honestly, sometimes this is easier to search or faster to search than your memory dumps. Less volatile network artifacts. These are still important, but they're going to disappear a little slower off the box. So get-DNS client, what DNS, where is it picking up DNS from, get-DNS client server address, and then also some details about the network connection. You want to get the IP address, you want to get the network mask, you want to get the gateway, because where is it routing this internet traffic through, and also, where are the proxy logs likely going to live, or what do I need to investigate? So there's some commands here. Get-net adapter also gives you some great details and can show you, some of those kinds of things. So users and groups is kind of important to understand, because who had access to a system? So unfortunately, PowerShell doesn't offer just simply a get-logged on users commandlet. Oh, that would be so sweet if they did, because it would tell me, hey, here's everybody logged onto the system at this given point in time. Unfortunately, they don't make it that easy, but we can still get some host user and group details. So, did an account have a local, or did a username have a local account on the box? That kind of thing. So there's a get-WMI object Win32 logged on user, and then you can do a select antecedent unique to kind of strip out some of the duplicate data there. It's kind of ugly. I'll be honest with you, this isn't actually PowerShell commandlet, but you can still run old school command line utilities in PowerShell. Query user, in my opinion, gives you a lot better results. You can get the local users on the box, who's in the user group on the system, get-local user group, and again, we pipe it out to select star, and everything I've talked about, again, you might want to do that, append the format -list -property star, so you're getting full details, anything that you run that I'm talking about in this talk. This is kind of helpful. This basically lists on the C drive the user directories. Now, it's not perfect, right? Because these things could be purged, they could be modified, whatever. But still, it's a pretty good indicator. Did this account ever log onto the box? If they have a user directory on the system, good chance that they actually did at one point log onto the box. So get-child item, C:\users, gives you a list of the usernames from that folder on there. So again, typically that only gets created when a user actually logs on to the host. Execution policy settings. So this will tell you, who can run PowerShell without, what PowerShell commands can you use and so forth. So get-execution policy will give you that. Get-execution policy list will kind of list those out for you. So super nice. Clipboard auto runs and tasks. So get-clipboard. Now that's for the current logged on user, but again, somebody had copied some text or whatever, might be helpful to dump out what they had stored in there, and then get-sim instance Win32 startup command shows you what's going to start up on the box. That's super helpful to know, what happens, what are these auto runs running when the system boots. And then get-scheduled task, again, that's a method of persistence on an endpoint, so that's why that is super helpful to collect. And then finally, host details. These are the things just that get us other information. Getting drivers, you might think, well, why would you want to do that? Well, because there aren't a lot of modern day rootkits, but usually those happen because drivers have kernel level access, right? So when you're trying to figure out, okay, it's got ring 0 on it, dumping out the drivers might be helpful. Getting the packages, hot fixes, the drive mappings and the hidden partitions that might live on an endpoint, and then finally the get-computer info, the full dump of everything. Again, just another helpful artifact that kind of helps complete the picture. Open files, I really wish there was a way to do this, just that worked every time. Get-smb open file. will only show network things. It won't show locally open files. I so wish it did. That would make life much easier. There is an open files query, but it's going to give you a warning if it's not turned on, and it's not typically turned on by default. And you might think, okay, well, I can turn it on and then I can rerun the command, right? No, unfortunately you can't, because when you do that, open files /local on, it tells you, okay, you got to reboot for the setting to take effect. What happens when you reboot to your digital forensic analysis? You've just modified the system. You've lost memory. Yeah, it's now you can turn it on proactively in the environment. You are going to impact system performance. You really got to baseline to see if that's acceptable or not. And this just scratches the surface. Here's a couple Microsoft resources. It has a whole lot more on PowerShell and some cool nifty tricks. Highly recommend you check this stuff out. I'm running really short on time here, but I got maybe time for 1 or 2 questions. If anybody has anything, fire away. Oops. So sometimes forensic capture is best effort. I'll let Tuan add to that.
Yeah, it would be the best effort thing. So if the system is frozen, I will check to see if the image integrity is good or not. And then I throw the image in to see, do I able to get all the artifacts that I need? If I have everything I needed, I don't need to continue. Now, if I don't have it, so sadly, you have to bounce it. And then once it come back, you can get what you can get. But of course, if you do get a memory, it won't be there anymore. So it's dependent on your investigations. Sometimes it is what it is. But I would double check your image first to see if you have everything you needed, even though it's frozen. But if you already got what you need, hey, just leave it frozen. Yeah. Any more questions? Stump the VP, please. Please. Yeah.
But is there, do you guys suggest any sort of like training or classes that will get me familiar with it? So like, I have a better understanding of what like the folks at my organization do that after the
So the question would be, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to be in the incident response team, or are you trying to be in a digital forensics world? Because the tools are and they overlap a little bit, but I mean the mind concept is a little bit different. So for help desk, why check with the Neurosoft website. They have a lot of tools that you can use and just play around with it. Get familiar with the window file structure, how the data was being pulled using that artifacts path and stuff, and then from there on, I will pivot to another things. For incident response team, what do you think?
Yeah, so just to kind of cover both. So one, again, just a quick plug, if you want to get the slides, slides.dfirmat.com. You may have to specify HTTP to get redirected to the GitHub repo, or you can hit me up, I can get you the direct link. But the other thing is ENISA, the European Union, has some awesome training stuff for learning digital forensics, for learning incident response, and they really cover a good gambit. They've got the lab guides for free. They've got virtual machines for free. They're low powered VMs, so you don't need a lot of horsepower to run them. And those lab guides will step you through it absolutely free of charge. So it's a great free place to learn. And again, that's the European Union putting out their technical training materials for digital forensics, incident response, detection, those sort of things. Awesome resource. Great question.
To add to that, if you've ever been to Belkasoft, I forgot how to pronounce it. It's Belkasoft, B-E-L-K-S-O-F-T. They have great free training. Now, they're trying to sell you their tool. So once you sign up for free training, you get to use the tool for 30 days. So you get to familiar not just the tool, but understanding where the artifacts live, and it will help you with your help desk situations and stuff. If they have mobile forensics up there too, so you can pull out from things. Yeah.
Cool. All right, folks, we are out of time, but we will be around, so feel free to hit us up. I think we're going to get some lunch, and then we'll be in the after party. Thank you, CornCon!